Hello folks and welcome to another Premodern video. We're going to be playing in the playoffs of the Magic Online Society, and I've been wanting to try this deck out for a very long time at this point. Of course, this deck is Elves, and this deck has always felt very interesting to me, and a deck that I really wanted to learn and actually become good with. The problem is that you need to play 4 Cradles for the deck to be as good as it really is, which is really one of the best, if not the actual best deck in the format, right? But BK has been helping me out, so shout out to BK. BK is great. Has been helping me out to actually find my playset of Cradles, so thank you so much for that, BK. I love you forever. And I wanted to start warming up a little bit, so for this playoff I chose to play some Elves. So what I did is I grabbed the deck list that won the South American Championship, and then I made some changes with some things that I liked, something that I disliked. So I didn't change the mana base, I didn't really touch. I don't know if 17 lands, it kind of feels like too few for me, but I imagine that the person knows that actually won the event knows better than I do, at least before I have played a match or two. The reason why this deck is so strong is you have Wirewood Symbiote, you have Korean Ranger, Lano Elves, and Field-Hunter Elves. This is all of these 1-drops can actually accelerate you, and you can kind of get going with very, very few lands. And then what you do is you play 35 creatures that you can then start going off with survival. So there's a lot of crazy synergies going on with this deck, and I'm gonna try to cover at least most of them. So the very first thing that we have is obviously this is an Elves deck, so we have a bunch of Elves going on. A Priest of Titanium makes ridiculous amounts of mana. Multanist's Acolyte is the Premodern version of Elvish Visionary for those legacy players, so obviously it combos really, really well with Symbiote, so you get to bounce your Acolyte to get to draw multiple cards, while at the same time you're using Symbiote to to untap your lands, your mana producing Elves, and then you kind of go off that way. One very cool angle is that because we have survival, we actually get to play Anger, and having all of these dudes be hasty is an absolute game changer. It really turbocharges the deck, and it makes it incredibly explosive, and you get to kind of win out of nowhere from certain situations. Also, there's the fact that Wirewood Symbiote allows you to bounce creatures back to your hand, so you can pitch them to survival, which is super, super sick. The way to enable Anger is Yavimaya Ranger, which we have 1 copy of. Also, if you want to be grinding for value, you can use Wirewood Symbiote to constantly bounce your Yavimaya Ranger. And speaking of bouncing your dudes, bouncing Deranged Hermit means that you just get to kind of go off making a bunch of squirrels, and then those hasty angry squirrels are gonna get to kill your opponent very quickly. What this deck has that I really, really like is a Natural Order angle, so you're gonna see that we have a Verdant Force in the main deck and then 1 Phantom of Nishoba in the sideboard. So the thing here is that this deck really struggles with Sly in particular, and decks like Goblins, which have a bunch of pingers, so Mog Fanatic and obviously Lightning Bolt, Shock, stuff like that. So what you do is you play a couple of Wall of Roots, and then this actually gives you a reliable source of mana, and then you get to Natural Order your Wall of Roots away, and then get a big fatty so that you can actually stabilize against the aggressive decks, which is pretty great. So this is a very, very cool angle of attack that this deck has. It also has a Kamal Fist of Krosa, which has some very, very cool tricks that I am hoping that I get to demonstrate here. So you can, make your Cradle into a creature 1/1, and then you untap it with your Korean Ranger and your Wirewood Symbiote, which is very, very sweet. So you get to do some tricks like that. We also have 1 Vigilante to answer enchantments and artifacts. We have Masticore as a way to destroy a bunch of creatures, actually allow us to control the board. And finally, a couple of copies of Tanglewire. This card always felt kind of awkward in the deck to me, but I think that the idea is sound. It makes sense to me, but it just feels out of place, which is a weird phrase to say. But I want to try it out. I actually cut 1 wire from the main deck and moved it to the sideboard to make room for another Field-Hunter Elves. The sideboard, I just copied a bunch from that list that I was talking about, and they made some changes from there. But we have Naturalizes, Druid Lyris. Notably, you want this to be not an elf, even though Elvish Lyris is a card. And the reason for that is that the main thing that this thing is going to be doing is blowing up Engineered Plague. So you actually don't want it to be an elf, which is funny. Then we have, Naturalizes, Color of the Claw against sweepers and stuff like that. Uktabi Orangutan versus Artifacts, Elvis Champion, whenever we're playing stuff like the Mirror or against the Rock, where you can just, just pivot and play an Elvis Champion, make all of your dudes bigger and unblockable, and just swing for lethal. Extra copies of Natural Order for the matchups where this is our main game plan, notably stuff like Sly and Goblins, and then 1 copy of Genesis to help us grind into the late game. Actually, Sharpshooter is an interesting one here. This is for the Mirror and for Goblins and stuff like that. We actually get to play Sharpshooter with haste, which is very nice. And the problem is that obviously we only have 5 red sources, so this card is always an interesting one, and I think it makes sense to include as just a one-off, but it always, I don't know, it's always felt weird. Obviously you have Granger and you can tutor for your Granger to enable it, but at that point it's like, what, turn 4? Like how valuable is this really on turn 4, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, so we'll see how things go. Hopefully you will enjoy it. Hopefully we will get to do some impressive stuff with this deck, and we hopefully we'll be able to get some W's. So looking forward to trying this deck out, but if you are interested in seeing more of this deck, I am thinking that this will be a deck that I will stick to. So this is a deck that I actually want to learn and get better with. I don't expect to do particularly well in my very first event with it. I do think this deck is actually very, very hard to play, but I'm gonna give it my best, so we'll see how things go. Hopefully it will go great. So see you there for round number 1. Okay, let's get this match started, and this hand looks absolutely fantastic. So we can go turn 1, fetch for an elf, and then turn 2, we're going to be able to play Survival, and then get the ball rolling from there. My opponent would have Swords of Plowshares here, but if they don't, yeah, we're going to be pretty good shape now. So let's play a Ranger. I'm going to play this Ranger through Daze, of course. It's way more important to resolve this Cranial Ranger than this Llanowar Elf. Opponent did have the plow? Oh wow. Alright, sure. So then this resolves, and I can now resolve Survival, or I can resolve the Llanowar Elf. I think I'd rather resolve the Llanowar Elf. Yeah, I think so. Alright, pass the turn back. If I weren't missing my land drop, I would be stoked to resolve Survival there instead of the Llanowar Elf, but because of my mana situation, I don't think my opponent should have let me untap. I mean, I don't think I couldn't punish them, right? But I don't think my opponent should have let me untap there. Okay, so now we're going to get to resolve Survival, which is obviously great. And my opponents get to draw some cards with Standstill. But we're going to untap Llanowar Elf, play this. And then I'm going to get to play... We're going to Survival, pitching... Actually, let's just play Wall of Roots. And then Survival, pitching Anger, so I can go get Squee. And then we're just going to pass the turn back after swinging for 1, of course. The key here is going to be whether my opponent gets to destroy the Survival or not. Because if they don't get to, I'm just going to probably just run away with the game. Okay, so they do have the Seal. Makes a lot of sense. I can get 1 more extra activation at the cost of bouncing a land, but I don't think I want to. So I think I'm just going to go get Yavimaya Granger here. I may get punished for this, but I do think that just being able to have access to haste now is going to be very, very important. Maybe I should have pitched the Acolyte to get something else. Oh, god damn it. Well, that's unfortunate. Alright, sure. So now I feel very silly. Let's... Llanowar Elf for Murtani's Acolyte. I'm gonna get to draw a card, play an elf. We're gonna untap Llanowar, bounce in a forest, replay forest. Oh, I already played my land, my bad. This is still fun. I do still get to play this Granger. Obviously, much rather have access to Symbiote instead of Granger now. But obviously I didn't know that I was going to find my one-off mountain off the top. And there I could have played one of my Llanowar Elves last turn, but that would be overextending into a Wrath, and there's just no need for me to do that. Okay, no Wrath. I could pay for all the Echoes if I wanted to here. I think I care more about the Acolyte than the Granger, so I'm not going to pay for the Granger. And and I am gonna pay for Multani Acolyte. I can just hardcast Squee here, but that would expose it to a Swords to Plowshares. So just gonna swing in for 4. My opponent going down to oh, that's an insane draw. Yeah, that's a ridiculous draw. Okay, so let's see if this resolves. Oh, actually, I should have attacked first. Okay, counterspell does not resolve. Can swing for 4. Seems fine. Could have swung for 5 there. Opponent probably doesn't have a Wrath, otherwise that would have been a pretty decent spot to land the Wrath of God. So maybe I should have... Okay, I should have maybe played Llanowar Elf, but like my opponent have an Impulse here. So now they probably find a Wrath, they're going to tap out for Wrath, and then I can just go Llanowar Elf into something. I do wonder how Humility works with Anger. I think my dudes still have Haste. Don't quote me on that though. Never know for sure how the hell Humility actually is supposed to work. Nobody knows. So don't worry about it. So my best draw would probably be Tanglewire. Tanglewire and Symbiote are probably my 2 best draws. That's a hilarious draw. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I can just hardcast this Burden Force, which would be a lethal attacker. So my opponent would need to counter it. Yeah, sure. So untap this one, bounce this one. Because the thing is, if my opponent resolves a Wrath, I'm just not gonna be able to cast this anymore, right? So, do I want to... I don't think I want to play the other elf. Oh, wait. Oh, this is 8 mana. This is not 7. Whoopsies. Well, I guess I'm just going to play Kamal instead then. And the reason is the same. Like, if I'm not casting this now, then I'm probably just not gonna be casting it if my opponent does have the Wrath of God. So let's say they do have Decree here. If they do have Decree, I mean, I do have to swing for lethal. If they do have Decree, they block here and here, and that's pretty bad for me, but I mean, I have to kind of run into it. I don't think there's too much I can do. Oh, Foth. Yeah, that's whatever. So split it. I mean, it doesn't matter how we split it, right? So let's say that they have Plow, which would be obviously worst case scenario. They Plow the Kamal, and then I guess the only card that matters out of all of these is Decree. So I'm gonna go with this split. I guess Impulse actually does matter. So it's gonna be Impulse plus land versus Decree plus Counterspell. Okay, so they choose Impulse plus land. So that's lethal. Awesome. Cool. So now we get to cut these terrible natural orders, which don't do anything, and the Burden Force, and then bring in Genesis, Tanglewire, and probably 3 or 4 Naturalizes. We also have Color of the Claw, which is pretty nice. I don't think Masticore's particularly great. Don't think Vigilante is particularly great. But I'm going to need the Naturalizes because of Humility. I cannot really beat Humility. Anger is kind of the best card in the deck. Kamal's so-so. So I have to cut 2 things. So I guess I'm just going to cut 2 walls, because I'm cutting the natural order package altogether. This looks fine. Honestly, maybe I should be cutting Kamal. Yeah, this is the typical elf hand that I was expecting to see at least once or twice. Or 3 times. Yeah, 17 lands is definitely on the low side of things, I'm going to say. So let's keep this. And I'm going to bottom like Llanowar Elf, Finhorn Elves, and Quirion Ranger. I think that having like hard sources of mana is going to matter. So Mul to 4 here. I'm slamming this Priest of Titania next turn. The question is whether do I find a fetch land, or whether do I find a mountain or a forest. Well, that answers the question, right? So we're going to get our mountain into play. Here's a Priest. I'm going to counter this. You don't. Okay, cool. Symbiote gets in there. And I'm hoping to be able to leverage this Color of the Claw, hopefully. Factory. Alright. So here's a Quirion Ranger. And we can't really attack because of the factory, so I'm just going to send the turn back. Opponent finally finds a white source. Immediately fetch. I'm going to play a Seal. Powder Keg. It's on tap. I have kind of infinite mana here. I can deal 1 damage here. Seems okay. Alright, 2 damage it is. Send the turn back. Impulse and step. Okay, so they're gonna put a counter on Powder Keg now. which means that Symbiote, Quirion Rangers are going to die. Hopefully my opponent gets a little bit greedy here and they Wrath. And if they Wrath, I think I just let it resolve so that I can get 4 4/4s effectively. Stand still. Not too much to be done there. Powder kegs. I am just going to bounce the Ranger. So 1 dude down. Oh, come on. So I guess I just don't play into a Wrath. So this is going to be, and I just accept that if my opponent has a Wrath, I just lose. But we can play through Mana Leak here at least. But if my opponent has a Wrath, I'm just gonna pack it. Okay. So color resolves. That is 1 bear. Opponent plows the priest. Oh, come on, dude. That's kind of incredible, honestly. Thoth. Yeah, I'm probably packing it here. Like, I'm not dead, but like, I just can't win anymore, right? Like, my cards just don't really do anything. I'm gonna be on the play now. Does Powder Keg mean that I want to Tabi? I don't think so. I think all my other cards are better. Yeah, I think this is just fine. I don't think I like Nantuko, as I said earlier, because the thing that I'm the most concerned about is specifically humility. On the play, the more that I play this deck, the more that I'm just... I don't think that it plays enough basic forests. I think I would like at least 1 more. I mean, we're keeping this one, but it's not great. I think I want to let this Range Hermit go. Ugh. Yeah, this is rough. This is rough. 2 moles to a mole to 4 and a mole to 5. Never find the second land drop. My opponent should have probably plowed before, but it's fine. It's not like it matters. Okay, ship the turn back. I don't think we can win this game anymore. I think we're just too far behind at this point. If I had been able to play the priest on turn 2, I think we would have maybe been able to fight. But at this point, I'm just too far behind. My opponent's like cantripping. They have good mana. At this point, we're just a little bit too far behind. I don't think that we can realistically win this one anymore. So there goes the Mana Leak. So I guess that my opponent could potentially, I don't know, make a bunch of misplays, like slamming a Humility right now that I can just untap and naturalize. If they get too careless, maybe I can get out of this, but playing Priest there for mana efficiency's sake, sure, another Mana Leak, that's fine. And Impulse, but I just cannot get my engine going. I would definitely like to try this deck with 1 more land and see how that feels, because we are kind of not doing it otherwise, you know? I mean, I guess if somehow my opponent does not have an answer to this survival, which seems extremely unlikely, but if that were to happen, maybe I can begin to start a comeback. But yeah, I just have to start jamming here, because if I don't jam, then what happens if my opponent just gets to cast Factor Fiction? So it may feel like a little bit like silly or careless that I'm just literally just jamming my spells. The problem is that if I don't jam, I also get punished. So there's not really too much I can do about it. Second Naturalize. Okay, so this means that if they tap out if they actually attack with this factory, I can just naturalize it, which isn't great for what's worth, but Wasteland. This land is... I don't like this land at all in Landstill. I think this is just like a worse Dust Bowl. So we naturalize the factory. I assume this resolves. I mean, if my opponent counters this, I'm going to be extremely happy. And this is what I'm saying. You know, like, this is how I can get lucky enough to win this game, is my opponent just gets a little bit too careless. They just get too confident, and I know, like, I manage to, like, draw a survival, and I can go from there. But under no more circumstances, yeah, this is incredible. This is incredibly good for me. Let's play a Symbiote here, because I can still take, if my opponent wastelands my Cradle, I can still take a hit, so it's just fine. Opponent untaps, 2 cards in hand. That's a lot of mana. They're just hard casting Decree. Wow. Okay. So if I find survival, I may actually get there. Ugh. 1 mana short from just hard casting this Genesis. So we ship it back. Like, my opponent gave me a window there, so I guess their hand must really suck. Stand still. I think I'll fetch and just play a Color. Just gives me more mana if my opponent continues to not use their Wasteland. And I can always just bounce this dude with Symbiote. Oh, wow. Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, it does, at this point, it doesn't matter, right? Because like, the standstill is going to resolve. My opponent's probably going to find an answer to stuff. Wasteland the Cradle now. And they're leaving the 2-mana up. This is a good play for my opponent because like they still have a 2-turn clock regardless. Whether this factory connects or not, like this card just doesn't matter. So by swinging with just the Angels, they are allowing themselves to like top deck a mana leak or a counterspell from the standstill, which is obviously a very good play there. But yep, that's gonna be it. Yeah, not super great, but yeah. Well played opponent, mulligan into 4 and to 5, games 2 and 3, you know, obviously. That's not gonna cut it. Alright, so things did not quite go my way there. I do think this deck is just playing too few lands, and I think that this is particularly brutal because, you know, in one of the matches where I just mulliganed into Oblivion, one of my hands had both a Cradle and my basic mountain, so it's like the deck was taunting me a little bit there, yeah, so the natural order plan actually seems very interesting to me, and I think it may be the right way to go. But I don't think that cutting lands is what you want to be doing in this deck. Like, every single game that we play, we just played 3 games, and 100% of those games, I had mana issues. Obviously, in the first one, my opponent's hand was not particularly good. They were not actually doing something very proactive. They never found a sweeper. So I was able to just kind of get there. But the truth of the matter is that not hitting land drops feels like you want to have like 2 or 3 lands at least, right? Particularly when you're playing natural order, right? So one thing that I always think about and I always put a lot of attention to is whenever you're building a deck and whenever you are choosing to do something new like this, you need to be cohesive, right? So playing natural order and adding Wall of Roots to your deck because you expect your creatures to get killed, that is very cohesive, right? Like that makes a lot of sense. However, if you expect all your creatures to die, and you need your Wall of Roots natural order, and this is your game plan to the point where you are going to be bringing in all 4 natural orders, then having, like, cutting on actual lands is not really what you want to be doing, you know? Because then, sure, you're going to have, like, you only have 17 lands, so the likelihood that you find, like, one of your Cradles is not, this is a pretty significant percentage of your total of lands, right? So, cutting lands and then hoping to find 3 actual lands that produce mana, and like you need 2 of those to be, you know, forest plus, you know, mountain or whatever, because Cradle doesn't tap for mana to cast your Wall of Roots on turn 2, right? So it's kind of awkward, you know, like it is kind of awkward. So that is going to be something that I'm interested in trying out. So I don't know what I'm going to be cutting. Maybe the second Deranged Hermit was overkill and this should be a basic forest instead. I could see that being the case. I could see just cutting the Tangle Wire straight up and just bringing them to the sideboard and then, you know, make room for, I don't know, maybe 1 Color of the Claw and like maybe the 3rd Natural Order, like something like that. So that we have a Tangle Wire plan for whenever that is good. And then like we go a little bit stronger on the Natural Order game plan. I don't know what the answer is because obviously I have 1 match total with this deck. So obviously my, my thoughts are not going to be super deep, you know, or super based on actual experience. But I do feel like even after those 3 games, the fact that 100% of the games that I played, I had mana issues, that is something, right? Like I don't believe that 17 lands is the way to go, so I'm definitely going to be adding 1 extra copy of Forest to this deck. Yeah, unfortunately this is going to be a short one, but thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll see you for more Premodern content very, very soon. Take care. Bye bye.